Hello there, welcome to my world of stuff. Well, Sunday night, it's Halloween, the Doctor's back, but what the flux is going on? Let's find out. Hello, welcome. Paul Mount, world of stuff, usual stuff. Doctor Who's back. It's Sunday night. It's now currently, 8 o'clock-ish. And the first episode of this new 6-part Doctor Who connected serial, Doctor Who Flux, has just aired on BBC One. And I'm here to deliver my verdict and my thoughts on this bizarre little episode. It's called The Halloween Apocalypse because, hey, it's Halloween. Although, to be fair, the episode didn't really have a lot to do with Halloween. But, it's an interesting new experiment or diversion for Doctor Who, certainly in the Chris Chibnall era. Now, this is a 6-part serial called Flux. This has come about partly because of the pandemic, which made what was planned for the new series had to be set aside, and a new scale of production. Because obviously Doctor Who over the last few years has been going abroad quite a lot and filming overseas. With the pandemic last year that wasn't possible, so scripts were presumably refashioned and restructured and a whole new story put together, which made the series more palatable to be filmed in and around Wales and Cardiff particularly, and in studios in Rothlock. And this episode did have that feel about it. It felt there was a lot of studio stuff, there was a lot of interior stuff, with some location stuff in Cardiff and some nice scenes in Liverpool. But it's interesting that we're having this 6-part, what's clearly going to be a huge adventure to be Jodie Whittaker's last season, although of course there's 3 more separate special episodes to come next year. So we've got the Halloween Apocalypse, written by Chris Chibnall, the first of 6, and it's hard to actually take a view on it really. You can take a view on how much you enjoyed this episode, but in terms of the story and where we're going, it's just too hard to tell because it's the first episode. We've got 6 episodes to go. It's like, reading the first chapter of a book and then saying, I really enjoyed that, and then putting it away because there's more to come. You can't really give a proper impression of, you can give an impression of what you thought of it, you can give your first impressions of it, but you can't give a verdict on it, if you like, on the whole story, because we haven't seen the story, and certainly in this we haven't seen the story because there was so much going on in this. I mean, people often complain that modern Doctor Who is breathless and doesn't stop. My God, this did not stop from the moment it started to the moment it ended. Multiple locations across time and space, multiple characters introduced with no real context as to who they were or what they are, which is interesting. It's an interesting technique. But so much going on and so many story threads and ideas. I mean, whoa, this was just full of big science fiction spectacle and ideas. And first of all, talking about the spectacle, I mean, this is massive. Some of the CGI in here was just astonishing. Some of it was little, I think particularly the pre-title sequence where the Doctor and Yaz are suspended upside down over a sea of acid by a villain who is clearly going to be recurring throughout the series. I think that was so ambitious. You've got people hanging on to metal rods and flying through the air, and that it's done on green screen in the studio, and it didn't have the finesse that Hollywood films have doing that sort of stuff. But that's what you'd be expected. This is a BBC production, but it looked fine, but it looked fake, and some of the planetary sort of landscapes that they were flying over just didn't look completely convincing. But that's it's stupid to criticise Doctor Who over its visuals and its special effects, because we know that historically that's not Doctor Who's all about. It's about the story, and that's the thing. It's hard to judge the story because we're just getting into it. But there's a lot going on here. As I said, there's a lot of locations. We suddenly find ourselves in 19th century Liverpool, where this builder is digging a tunnel, but we don't know why. Then we're forward to the modern day. We meet Dan Lewis, played by very affably and very well by John Bishop, who's the everyman figure in this story. He's the Doctor's new companion for the duration. And he's a guy who's down on his luck. He's trying to pass himself off as a tour guide in a museum in Liverpool, but he's got nothing really. He helps out in the food bank, but his own cupboard is bare, and he's thrust into a very bizarre adventure on Halloween when an alien creature with a face like a dog, which you saw in the trailer, breaks into his house, kidnaps him and takes him off into a spaceship, and explains that he's now effectively the alien's pet, because there are 7 billion of these spaceships on their way to Earth, and each one of these spaceships will rescue a human being because something terrible is coming that's going to destroy the Earth. It's a mad and crazy idea, but it's the sort of thing that Doctor Who can get away with. Meanwhile, the Doctor is on the track of this dog-type creature because it's apparently the only working operative member of the Division. Now, you may remember the Division was this strange cabal of covert Time Lords who had apparently been responsible for the Doctor's unknown past. That was referenced in the previous series. So there's clearly that arc hasn't finished yet. The Doctor's still in pursuit of her own past to find a little bit more about who she is and where she came from. Meanwhile, we've got other characters. We've got Vinda, who's this character played by Jacob Anderson, who's an astronaut in the far future, who's on board a space station, which I noticed is called Rose, which is a nice little throwback, where he's carrying out routine duties until he observes planets being destroyed by this strange space cloud thing, which appears to be known as the Flux. He manages to escape from the space station before that's blown up, and he's hurtling through space in an escape pod. We also have a couple of people who seem to be agents of something who live in the Arctic. They're destroyed when the alien creature, and you'll have to forgive me because I've just seen the episode, so I'm not completely au fait with all the character names, but this very sinister alien creature that we saw imprisoned in an early scene in the episode, which absorbs people and disintegrates them. That's quite nasty. There's some quite nasty little bits of body horror in this, which quite surprised me, really. And then we get, I'm trying to think of all the different characters and the different situations. And it's hard to give a coherent review because the story, enjoyable as it was, wasn't very coherent. There wasn't really a story because this was just sort of introducing you to the pieces on a game of chess, putting them on the board, ready for them to be moved around over the next 5 weeks, and that includes the Doctor and Yaz and New Boy Dan. We got cameo appearances by a weeping angel in one particularly creepy sequence, and in fact it's the best use of a weeping angel since Blink back in season 3, much as Stephen Moffat may have created them. He didn't really know what else to do with them, but there was a very creepy scene with this woman called Claire, who incidentally pops up having already met the Doctor, although the Doctor hasn't met her and doesn't know who she is, and that's a little bit Stephen Moffat timey-wimey because it's some sort of timeline thing. She's heading home, and a weeping angel appears in the street, and she's trying to get back into the house without blinking. She drops her keys, she tries to pick them up. It's classic sort of horror Doctor Who, and it's done really, really well. It's really well filmed. And then we get another scene later on where Di, who's the woman that John Bishop's character is sort of tentatively going out with, she's lured into an empty house which blazes with lights, and then she finds herself in some sort of watery quarry area. So there's so much going on in this, and we get, of course, the Sontarans appearing, a quick appearance of a Sontaran battle cruiser heading towards the Earth. Sontarans look great. I mean, I love the Sontarans. The design hasn't always shown them off at their best, but I think that this new design's pretty good. Slightly disappointed that the scene we saw in this episode was more comical in nature, because I think we've had enough of that with Stephen Moffat turning them into comedy characters, and this tended to sort of play on that a little bit. But I'm hoping that in the next episode, which is called War of the Sontarans, by the way, as you probably know, we'll see them at their warlike and most belligerent best. Again, there's so much going on. I mean, there's also this thing, the TARDIS seems to be disintegrating and melting, well, the Doctor sort of shrugs that off. That's clearly going to be part of what's going on. I just got the impression that this was a story that was like parts of a jigsaw puzzle, random pieces that were thrown in, and you have to look at them and think, right, that's about that, and that belongs there, but we don't know where this is going. So it's very hard to properly judge the story until we know what the story is. It was certainly huge and epic in scale, and I love scenes like the TARDIS in space with the Doctor and her companions in the doorway looking out across space. They used to do that sort of stuff in the early years of the reboot of Doctor Who, but the special effects now, the CGI is so seamless and the green screen work is so well done, and that's the visual stuff that really works. and the scenes of this space cloud, the Flux, smashing planets. One terrific, quite scary scene of this planet being destroyed by this thing, and the inhabitants of the planet running to escape and being devoured. I mean, there's some quite creepy, horrific stuff in this. It's quite strong stuff for a family audience. So that's apologies if this review has been incredibly disjointed, but it was a disjointed episode, but it was a good episode. I think the writing was solid. Certainly I think the best season opener that Chris Chibnall has done. Although I was a big fan of Spyfall Part 1, which had a real, scale to it. But I thought this was genuinely hugely enjoyable, very accomplished, very bold piece of writing, because there are so many pieces, so many balls being juggled, and we don't know where they're going to land yet. But I think as an episode, I think for Doctor Who fans, hopefully those who aren't still waving their fist at the Lady Doctor, and by the way, if you've come here expecting me to slag off Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker, jog on, because I don't do that. These are TV professionals who deserve a little bit of respect, even if you don't like their work. So yeah, I don't know where this is going, but I'm thrilled and really excited, looking forward to the next 5 weeks to find out where this is all going as we career towards Jodie Whittaker's regeneration. So a very impressive, very bold and confident start. I think that possibly casual viewers might be completely bemused by this, because the pace of it just did not stop. And although it wasn't hugely continuity heavy, you had a reference to the Division, and you had certain things that might puzzle casual viewers, but also hopefully the scale of the threat and the sense that this Flux thing is really terrifyingly powerful. And as the Doctor says towards the end of the episode, the end of the universe, the stakes don't get much higher than that, and I think that alone should bring people back. So I'm hoping this goes down well. I'm hoping that certainly that the fan base that's been so dismissive and so rude about this era Doctor will find, or will allow themselves rather to enjoy this, because I think they've gone in since this era started willfully preparing to hate it, whether they really hated it or not. But I think this was a very bold, brash, confusing in places, and imaginative start to the season. But as I said, it's hard to give a proper view on it until we see a bit more. But I think I enjoyed it to the extent that I give it an 8 out of 10 as an episode. But you can't help feeling that the story is yet to start, and we're just getting going. So that's Doctor Who, the Halloween Apocalypse, Part 1 of Flux. If you watched it, presumably you've watched it, or you wouldn't have watched 12 minutes of me rabbiting on about it, why not let me know what you thought of it by leaving a message down below. If you're interested in anything else that I talk about on this channel, you need to press that like and subscribe. If you want to see further reviews of these episodes weekly, then you need to press that subscribe button so you'll be notified as soon as they arrive. Plus there'll be all the usual bits and pieces, reviews and unboxings and guff coming up on this channel. So let me know what you thought of this episode, and hopefully the reviews will be a bit sharper and more to the point as the story starts to cohere. But at the moment it's a bit sort of scattergun, and it's hard to sort of form a full view on it, but I really enjoyed watching it and I'm looking forward to more. So that's me on the Halloween Apocalypse. So I'm out of here for now, and until next time, you know what they say, keep taking the stuff.